will remain the land of the free, only so long as it is the home of the brave. Welcome judges, parents, and fellow contestants. My name is Aurora Norland. Elmer Davis's inspiring quote has been and continues to be proven repeatedly in America. So many people have been brave for this wonderful country. Among them are the soldiers who fought in the Revolutionary War, the passengers of Flight 93, and even ordinary people like you and me. To begin with, one of the best examples of bravery is our original fight for freedom, the Revolutionary War. Before any real warfare occurred, the British government passed new taxes on the colonists, specifically on tea. The colonists were already annoyed with the British government, and these new taxes especially angered them. So, in December of 1773, about 116 Bostonian men boarded British ships and threw 342 tea chests into the Boston harbor in what became known as the Boston Tea Party. These men knew that if they were caught, there would be severe consequences and possibly even death. This didn't matter to them as much as their want of freedom did. Later, the Second Continental Congress formed the Continental Army. This consisted of thousands of men who were untrained and didn't have many weapons. Despite their conditions, these men fought hard for the freedom that they desperately wanted. Their first battle on June 17, 1775, known as the Battle of Bunker Hill, was lost, but it inspired these men to fight even harder for the freedom that they desperately wanted. Finally, after years of fighting, on October 19, 1781, the Continental Army won, gaining America the freedom we have today. Without the bravery of the men in the Boston Tea Party and the Continental Army, we might not be where we are today. Another great example of people being brave for their country is the passengers of Flight 93. On the fateful day of September 11, 2001, at 8:42 a.m., the United Airlines Flight 93 departed from New Jersey. Because their flight was delayed, the passengers were able to find out about the hits on the Twin Towers. When the terrorists took control of their plane's cockpit, the passengers took a vote and decided to fight back. After calling their loved ones to leave their final messages, the passengers bravely fought the hijackers, causing the plane to crash in a field in Pennsylvania, killing the 33 passengers and 7 crew members aboard. Because of their bravery, the plane never reached where it was intended to crash at the White House, saving hundreds more lives. While the soldiers fighting the Revolutionary War and the passengers of Flight 93 taking the plane down are examples of extreme bravery, even we, as ordinary people, can be brave. You might think that you can't be considered brave because you can't do some big, amazing thing, but there are many everyday ways to be brave. For example, you could just stand up for your beliefs. When people try to put you down for what you believe in, they're trying to take away your freedom of speech. But if you stand up and don't let them put you down, you're protecting that freedom. You could also help maintain the unity of America. People tend to underestimate just how much being nice can do. They tend to pass everyone by, like if they're not their friend on Facebook or aren't following them on Instagram, they don't matter. But if you just stop and say hello and give a smile, you can do good for the country. You could also do community service. When people set aside their differences and help each other, they're growing closer together so that when bad things do happen, we can stand together as a nation and protect our freedom together. People show their bravery for freedom in many ways, like the soldiers who fought in the Revolutionary War, the passengers of Flight 93, and even ordinary people. They prove that if we are brave, we can keep our freedom. Elmer Davis's quote will always stand true. This nation will remain the land of the free, only so long as it is the home of the brave.
September 11, 2001 was a day no one will forget. This day was terrifying, but what would you have done in the situation of giving your own life to save thousands? My name is Victoria Bonda, and I personally wasn't alive yet when the attack on 9/11 occurred, but it's a day in history that I take seriously and to heart. 9/11 was the deadliest terrorist attack in U.S. history. Now, there's an event on this day that happened on the United Airlines Flight 93. If you ask me, this is one of the most heroic and patriotic things everyday civilians could do. If you remember my question earlier, when I said it, I know a lot of you were thinking, well, that's one of the scariest responsibilities you could be given. These people on Flight 93 made the decision to save thousands or maybe more. On this flight, there were 33 passengers, 7 crew members, and 4 hijackers. At about 9:28 a.m., the terrorists infiltrated the cockpit of the plane. The terrorists made an announcement directing the passengers to sit down and stated there was a bomb aboard. The passengers, already terrified, huddled in the back of the plane to discuss the situation. The passengers used their cell phones and in-flight phones to call loved ones and let them know. I personally wouldn't be able to hold it together telling my family what was going on. If you had to do this, would you decide to do what they did? The passengers, along with the crew members, decided to rush the cockpit, take down the terrorists, and take control of the plane. This takes so much courage for doing what these people did. Sacrificing your own life may never be something you'd ever think you'll do, but it came upon these people so unexpectedly. Given the situation, they kept it together and arose to the action of saving the lives of people whom they didn't even know. Of course, the people already knew what was going on with the other attacks, and they knew they were a part of it. The stand they made changed a lot of things for so many people, having the unholy fate of losing a loved one or dying from wherever the crash was set to go. People everywhere remember the actions that took place on this day, and I noticed the things that went down on this flight don't get as much attention or praise. How is it the citizens on Flight 93 don't get the appreciation that they deserve? I personally have been thinking about how to help. I have been thinking about the courage that I could take from this story. I have been influenced in a way that makes me want to protect my country. I'm sure this is the same case for a lot of people everywhere. This makes me think about how to help. Any help, whether it be small or big, can be a huge help. I would give my life to help my country, and I want to serve for my country in any way possible. Now, if this action can influence me in such a way, I know it will forever be remembered for these 40 people's patriotism. I know all the actions taken place by first responders are all equally important, but remember, these people never signed up for it. The people on this flight had no doubt about saving the lives of their fellow Americans. Can you honestly say, given the situation, that you would give up everything and save the lives of people whom you don't know? The passengers and crew members crashed the plane in a field in Pennsylvania, terrified, knowing this was going on, but holding it together for each other and for their fellow Americans. Today you can go to the field where the crash happened and see the memorial grounds. These people deserve all the thanks and appreciation in the world. We try to take more precautions with plane safety, with more and closer screening for boarding, hoping nothing like this will repeat. If it did, even remotely close, I don't know if there would be a whole group to give up everything like these people did. It's obvious these people were heroes and always will be remembered. I give my thanks to people like this, people who would give their life to save their country. When this story of Flight 93 means a lot to me. When thinking of their decision, I think, how better could someone prove love and patriotism for their country? Thank you for your time, and I hope you remember the story that I have shared with you today.
Hi everyone, I hope you're all having a wonderful morning. Now, liberty is to be free in society, but freedom is but a social construct. Now, the world we live in today is as free and as equal as it's ever been. You're free to go where you want, be who you want, even love who you want. But we're all just looking through rose-colored glasses, and we need to perceive that our nation is not as great and may not contain all the liberties that you may think. Unfortunately, today, people are still being treated unjustly and unfairly in our nation. One of the most hard hit by this discrimination is the female community. Now, discrimination is abundant when you're a woman wanting to work in a man's field. Jobs in physical trades, for instance, construction, automotive industries, even some science and doctor positions, are often steered prominently towards men and, curiously enough, away from women. If a female does get hired into these jobs, she typically makes less than her male counterpart would. This was curious to me, so I did some research and found out that a 2016 study shows that females made 80.1% of what males made in the U.S. alone, says the Institute for Women's Policy Research. 81.5%. That's 19.5% that's now going to pay for extra food, water, even extra Christmas presents under the tree. That's an outrage. If liberty is to be free, does this really sound free to you? Now, luckily, women are trying to push their way up into these harder, more dominating jobs. Now, our nation is making an effort to present equally among the sisters and brothers of America. I mean, so many historical events have had females that have made it become great and have us remember them. So I would like everybody to close their eyes in the audience, please. Okay, so I would like everyone to imagine you're in the Revolutionary War. I know none of us were, but just picture it. You're running down with your gun, you're fighting off the British and the Redcoats, trying to make our nation its own. Now I want you to picture what women were doing at this time. You may all open your eyes now. It was a lot harder to picture what women were doing at this time, wasn't it? Well, curiously enough, many women were often part of the Daughters of Liberty, a renegade group who worked in factories making guns and bullets that soldiers couldn't because they were off fighting to make our country its own. They were also dying on the front lines, trying to save their fathers and sons at war by being nurses. Thanks to these women, our nation is what it is today. Another woman who triumphed in her field was Sally Ride. Now, Sally Ride was the first female astronaut to go up into space January 18th, 1983. 83. Almost all of you were alive in 83. That's crazy to me. But there are so many other women who did amazing things, like Elizabeth Blackwell, first woman doctor, and Anna Bradstreet, first woman author. Now, thanks to these women and the courage that our nation provides and the liberties that it gives, they were able to set a path for me and so many others to triumph in those fields. But still, the community faces backlash. So many women are still being turned down and pushed away from reaching their dreams. So many women cannot feel welcome in these male-dominated fields. Not being welcome into these fields means that a woman may have to be part of a man's American dream, to stay home, cook, and take care of children. This stereotype averts females from putting their beautiful minds to work. Now, this is so unfortunate. My generation needs to stand up, and we need to take a sledgehammer to the stereotype. We need to show that no matter who you are, what race, what gender, from what nation, it doesn't matter. The liberties that our nation has given you are given to everyone. Now, where am I going with this? Well, our nation is amazing. It's helped put women on the moon and helped them save lives. But these are just a few of the lucky ones. Now, so many more are being turned down and stopped from reaching their dreams. I stand with my country and would die to protect it, and I would gladly fight for it, and I know so many in the audience have. But we cannot only just see the good in our nation. We cannot only just see the silver lining. We must also see the bad and the ugly. Before my contestants come up here and present their beautiful speeches, we all must realize that our nation needs things that have to be fixed in it. We all need to fix those things. And once we realize this, we will truly be the greatest nation on earth. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you for having me. My name is Nathan Merifield, as you may have heard. Thank you for also listening, a guest, fellow contestants, and judges. May I just say your speeches were amazing. So let me begin. Ulysses S. Grant once said, war never changes. War is what has defined man for many centuries, before and probably after today too. I mean, this is highly probable because war can be over anything, from misconceptions to stupid disagreements. And let's face it, that is most of the time. And not to mention, let's face it, the chances of us being in a war with North Korea is real. Mark Fitzpatrick, sorry, his name's kind of difficult to pronounce, said that given the personalities of both sides, there's about a 50-50% chance that we will be in a war with North Korea. Now, I'm usually a very unlucky man, so I don't like those odds myself. But not to mention, there's not even anything to benefit from war. I mean, loved ones are lost and lives are shorter than ever. And not to mention, some soldiers that come back from war are also faced with constant paranoia that they can be sent back and witness what they saw, especially since sometimes you can see extremely gruesome moments in those. And personally, I don't think that's very fun for the soldiers. Now, let's also say this. I mean, most of the time, war involves bad decisions, and those bad decisions affect the future more bad than good. I mean, World War II started because we blamed Germany for World War I. When they were brought in because of a treaty, we made them pay all the full expenses of war, just so there would be peace. But, again, that affected the future. That is the reason Adolf Hitler, one of the reasons that he started his rise. Not to mention, North Korea made their missile because they feel like they had to make threats to protect this country. And obviously, his people also believe in this method because that's how he keeps getting reelected. And in the Civil War, all he did was beat the South in subordination. Now, although I know these two are not the main reasons it happened, but racism still stands and slavery still exists. A study by the International Labor Organization estimated about 40 million people to be enslaved over the world. I mean, that's a lot. And about 50,000 of that is in the United States. And I honestly thought that the Civil War was meant to end that. And only the dead have seen the end of war. This was said by Pluto, a Greek general. War is a curse that can last for a lifetime. I mean, one of my uncles, he is a Green Beret. I told him what I wanted to be. He said, you don't want to be a soldier, because the stuff that you see there will also will probably scar you for life. Now, I used to want to be a Marine before that. I used to train every day. I mean, I used to have way more muscles than this, extremely more. Fun fact. But either way, I mean, that's what I mean, because it mostly does affect the future more bad than good. War has mostly brought distrust, ignorance, and hatred. And it's like Ulysses S. Grant once said, war never changes. Now, some of you may be wondering why I exactly wrote this speech. It's to detest the idea of war, that there are other methods into ending war. There are such things as peaceful negotiation, trades, possibly even a card game. I mean, come on. I've settled a lot of agreements by playing a round of blackjack with my brothers. It's true. I got $50 from that. And although I know these sound like childish ideas, I mean, they could possibly still work. I mean, peace does not come naturally. But the only question is, are you willing to work for it? My name is Nathan Merifield. Thank you for having me.
How many of you will give up your life to fight for what you believe in? How many of you would sacrifice your life and everything you ever wanted to protect your country? Anyone? My name is Derek McCoy Jr., and I believe the person that would do that is Patrick Daniel Tillman. Pat Tillman was born on November 6, 1976 in Fremont, California. By the age of 10, he said that he knew what he wanted to do with his life. He wanted to play professional football. When Pat Tillman was in high school, he excelled on the football field, helping his team go to the league state championship and win. But not just him winning the championship. Also, he stopped his classmates, friends, and everybody that was being bullied at his school. He stopped that. And because of that, he got a scholarship to ASU. Now, at ASU, Pat Tillman thrived on the football field and off. He led his team to an undefeated record and went to the 1997 Rose Bowl. Pat Tillman got an award that same year for Pac-10 Defensive Player of the Year, ASU's Most Valuable Player of the Year, and the Best Performance by Student, which is the Clyde B. Smith Academic Award, in both 1996 and in 1997. When Pat Tillman was done with college, he moved on to the NFL. He was drafted in the 7th round to the Arizona Cardinals. Finally, his dream, the one he's been looking forward to ever since he was 10 years old, was finally there. Pat Tillman was at the highlight of his career, making $3.6 million when September 11th, 2001 happened. It's a day where our country was attacked, our safety was threatened. Pat Tillman that day said, "Sports embodied many of the qualities I dream meaningful. However, these last few years, especially after recent events, I've come to appreciate just how shallow and insignificant my role is. It is no longer important. For that reason, Pat Tillman joined the Army. Somewhere inside, we hear a voice. It leads us in the direction of the person we wish to become, but it is up to us whether or not to follow. That is patriotism. Pat Tillman action defines what patriotism means to me. The giving up of one's own interest or dreams in order to help others or to defend a cause that benefits others. His decision to join the Army, he had $3.6 million. $3.6 million. That's a lot of money. Would you give up all that money to go fight in the Army? Pat Tillman fought in the Army for 2 years until he was unfortunately shot on April 22nd, 2004. He was awarded the Purple Heart Medal of Honor. Pat Tillman died before I was even born, but yet he still leaves a mark on me. He's still a role model for me and a lot of others. Pat Tillman gave up all the perks of being a professional football player. He had $3.6 million. Pat Tillman sacrificed himself for us, our country. How many of you would do that? In closing, I would like everybody to stand for a moment of silence for Pat Tillman. Thank you, Mr. Tillman.
And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt, I love this land. God bless the USA. Those 4 verses to Lee Greenwood's song, God Bless the USA, make me proud to be an American citizen. They touch my heart. Those verses are powerful, meaningful, and memorable. This song inspires me to be more patriotic and to always love our great nation. Welcome judges, teachers, parents, and my fellow peers. I am Ava Nicholas, and I'm here today to talk to you about why these great 4 verses in one song has made me an even more patriotic person. It wasn't until my very own Lake Pleasant Elementary's traditional 9/11 assembly did I really see what our flag means to this great country because of this song. Have you ever tried to visualize words to a song? My fellow peers, when you hear God Bless the USA, do you think of Lee Greenwood singing at Game 4 of the World Series? I know I do. I can actually picture now up on the projector in my auditorium. To the adults in this room, I'm sure you can picture this too. Lee Greenwood wearing that hard-to-miss American flag leather jacket. Seeing the players, the coaches, our armed forces, fans in the stadium holding flags and pictures of lost loved ones. It is very moving. What a proud American moment for our nation. And I gladly stand up. Those words make me proud as I picture the flags standing tall, Americans waving flags, everyone on their feet. It actually takes my breath away. This represents how united we are, and proud to be defending her, our wonderful flag. This song wasn't written until 1984, 17 years before the 9/11 tragedy. How many of you knew that? I'm not sure that my generation would recognize the song as much as we do now had 9/11 not happened. Though it had been sung years prior at presidential inaugurations and political events, it gained most recognition because sung at the World Series. Lee Greenwood wrote the song with the intention of being patriotic, but I'm not sure he even knew what degree this would go to. Isn't it ironically interesting how this song became more significant after 9/11? This song gave people hope and comfort. It's hard to believe that a song so special could do that to a person, but it really did. A little song, out of billions, has changed a person like me to be more proud of the country we live in. I've talked a little bit about the visualization of these special song lyrics, how the song's involved and takes a new patriotic meaning. But now, I want to focus on something you could not see. It's something each individual has to feel. It is the pride in this amazing country. It is the love of fellow Americans.
Like the song says, there ain't no doubt, I love this land, God bless the USA. And let me tell you, God does bless the USA. I feel it, and I can give you an example. I know when I see that iconic picture of 3 New York City firefighters covered in dust, holding that bright red, white, and blue flag high in the air, in the rubble of once was our Twin Towers, I know that was God's presence. God really does bless the USA. Despite losses, despite history being forever changed, and despite the fear of the unknown, our strength has showed through the flag and God. I truly feel this feeling. It's within my heart. It is that feeling of love, of hope, of joy, and of peace. You say the words, but it's different when you actually feel it. Let's all take a moment to feel it in our hearts. Did you feel it? Songs, words, songs, and poems. They can make us emotional. They can remind us of a certain time, a certain feeling. Lee Greenwood wrote the song so everyone listening to it would feel patriotic. He did his job. I'm sorry we all recognize the song the way we do because of a tragedy. I wish it was under different circumstances. But I'm thankful to know more about the song and its meaning. I'm thankful for our flag, I'm thankful for God, and I'm thankful for being able to give this speech. I am only 12 years old, and I feel more patriotic than ever by listening to these 4 verses. And I'd gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. Because there ain't no doubt, I love this land. God bless the USA. A song truly does change your life. It changed mine. Has it changed yours?
What if I told you that there would be a new leader elected to our country? With one catch, you have no say in who our next president can be. Because if not one person in this room held a government official position, none of us would be allowed to vote. That would be horrible. Good morning and welcome judges, guests, and fellow contestants. My name is Dominique Van Winkle, and I am a proud citizen of these United States. Knowing that I will have the freedom to vote in the future makes me feel proud, important, and included. To have the freedom to vote, one must be at least 18 years of age, or born or naturalized citizen of the United States, and also must be eligible under your state's regulations. For example, having a felony on one's record would take away one's ability to vote in most or all states. Having the right to vote should not be taken for granted. There have been many amendments made over who can vote over time. At first, only white or light-skinned males who owned property were able to vote. Shortly after, a change was made to include white males who did not own property, but still, women and African Americans were not given the freedom to vote. On February 3rd, 1870, the 15th Amendment was added and allowed African American men the ability to vote. But not until 1920 did females in our country receive the right to vote as well. Our country has definitely come a long way and has also put much effort into our voting regulations. I am excited knowing that once I turn 18, I will have the ability to vote not only in our state's elections, but also federal. In the year 2024, I will be able to vote in the presidential election, something that I have been looking forward to since our last presidential election. Now a question. What does having the right to vote as a citizen of a democracy mean to you? Speaking for myself, knowing that I can be a part of changes that will happen in my city, state, and country makes me feel empowered. These changes will not only affect me, but also those I care about and others in my community. I believe that once one is eligible to vote, that they should do it. It is a privilege to be able to vote in this wonderful country of ours. Now, some may say that because it is a right and not mandatory, that they do not need to or even want to, but just think about this. By being a United States citizen, you should care for your country, including being loyal and wanting what is best for all. If no one cared enough to vote, our country as a whole would suffer. It is up to each one of us as Americans to do our own research on each candidate who is running for both federal and state office. Is freedom not a huge part of the American dream? Then we need to utilize that freedom and vote. Utilize the internet to learn about your candidates. Also, learn about potential law changes so that you can stay informed about what is going on in your city, community, and state. The Declaration of Independence states, quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights," end quote. I believe the right to vote is one of these rights. Just think about it for a moment. The leaders of our country would not have added new amendments to our great Constitution that we so religiously follow within our government unless it was important. Our country is not under totalitarianism. Therefore, we have freedom. The right to vote, as well as all freedoms we have today, were fought for. Having the right to participate in our democracy by casting my vote means so much to me, and I'll almost certainly do my part and vote once I'm of age. I hope all of you will also do your part. Now, it is part of the American dream, isn't it? My name is Dominique Van Winkle, and I leave you with this question. Do you plan to cast your vote in the upcoming elections? Thank you for your time.
A warm smile is the universal language of kindness. We live in a world where a single click on the internet can expose us to the violence, brutality, and barbarity painted across the landscape of our globe and even our country, America. The berating words portrayed transversely on all social media platforms and used in person by individuals who are so affected by society itself is grueling. Warm smile, kindness, not the first words that come to mind when referring to today's social order in America. When William Arthur Ward, one of America's most beloved and quoted writers of the 20th century, gave a quote rooted deeply in sympathy for actions towards others, it displayed high moral standards, which is not what we see in everyday life. Welcome, fellow Americans, in other words, everyone who is given the choice to make a difference, to a message from me. My name is Elena Yoder, and I'm a 14-year-old concerned about the kindness demonstrated amongst our country. Despite what some say, we are all equal, yes. We may come from different origins and celebrate multiple religions, but why should our skin color have anything to do with our worth? Over the years, many historical figures have stood up for what they believed in. These people saw what was wrong, made the bold choice to act upon it, and fight. Some peaceful and others in a more aggressive way. Susan B. Anthony, Martin Luther King Jr., Sally Ride, Barack Obama, and Amelia Earhart are a few examples of Americans who, like me, have chosen to stand up for what they hold dear to their hearts. Their firmness of purpose to accomplish what they believe in is undeniable. Whether it was the fight for civil rights, women's rights, the first woman astronaut, or the first African-American president, each one of these people, along with many others, is why America has been able to overcome so many historical hurdles. Now, while this may be true, do you believe that it could have been done without the help of others? Absolutely not. It took time, energy, and teamwork to build up a sturdy union filled with people of all races to obtain what was being fought for. So where among those firm, determined lines did we get off pulling each other down? How did people get off assuming that bruising someone else's soul is okay? Did our ancestors fight as hard as they possibly could with freedom to their dreams so close they could taste it? For our generations to reprimand the fellow people around us? Bullying in America is a very serious issue in schools and online. There are over 3.2 million victims of verbal, physical, and cyberbullying per year. On average, around 160,000 kids skip school to avoid being bullied. Decrypting words about others' origins, skin color, and way they dress is how most kids are treated. We as a country need to open our eyes to see what has become of our promised land, and while we cannot possibly change the past, the one thing we can focus on is the future and where it is going to go. I invite you right now to close your eyes and picture a place filled with kindness, a place where everybody is equal, a place where everybody is free to be who they are without being judged by society and its hateful inhabitants. That place is what I dream of. Everyone being able to go to school without being criticized by the way they dress, music they like, what they say, how they act, and families they come from, anyone. To have the means to own a social media account without being chastised for what they post. A random act of kindness is a non-premeditated, inconsistent action designed to offer kindness towards the outside world. Spread Kindness, Random Acts of Kindness, Ben's Bell, and Kindness Connection are a few examples of organizations that work with kindness in America. Their groups are helping to fulfill the virtue and remove despotic behavior. Those groups are helping to restate William Arthur Ward's vision of kindness, and I am standing before you today with the hope that after this, you will help the world become what we all envision it to be. Use the power and rights you have as an American to promote senseless acts of beauty and create the world into something different than what it is. Hold open a door, offer to help, give compliments, and make the decision each and every day when you wake up to not fall into what society has to offer, but to panoply what Ward says. Use your kindness to its advantage because while we may not all come from the same beliefs or believe in everything the same, everybody deserves to have a bit of kindness sprinkled in their lives. So often we get caught up in the hustle and bustle of work, school, sports, society itself, that we often forget to choose what is right. Most of the time, we take the road more traveled and resort back to the easy way of doing things. So I encourage you to take the road less traveled, do the right thing, and support others around you to do the same. A warm smile is the universal language of kindness. So, what are you going to do today to offer the kindness in your heart to someone else around you? Thank you.
Christmas came early on December 14th, 2028, when the 126th Congress passed the 20th Amendment to the United States Constitution. It was a historic event for millions of U.S. citizens who, up until the amendment passed, were not eligible to run for the office of president. Welcome parents, guests, judges, and fellow contestants. My name is Cori Borgstadt. The 28th Amendment is the most significant amendment to my life. Well, as you may know, there is no 28th Amendment. But today I'm here to explain to you why there should be. What you say, what you think, what color your hair is, who your friends are, what faith you practice. These are all things that you can control. But one thing you can't control is where you're born or who your biological parents will be. In the United States, citizens are guaranteed numerous freedoms under the country's constitution. American children are often told that they can do anything, be anything, and become anything they want, even president of our country. But for an estimated 20 million American citizens, the ability to run for the highest office in the land does not exist. To prevent foreign influences over the political affairs of our country, our founding fathers included a provision in the Constitution which states that all candidates must be natural born. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5 of the Constitution states that no person except a natural born citizen or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution is eligible to the office of president. It has been suggested that the framers of our Constitution used the term natural born in a geographical sense, a person born within the boundaries of our country. There was similar requirement of inhabitant for senators and representatives in Article 1 of the Constitution. Later in Article 1, there is mention of requiring citizenship through naturalization. It seems that the Constitution provides two ways to become a citizen, natural born or through the naturalization process. As a result, many citizens are not eligible candidates for the job of president. The ratification of the 20th Amendment would do away with the natural born citizen clause and would allow all citizens to have equal opportunity to become president of the United States so long as the minimum age, residency, and other requirements were met. An amendment that would eliminate the natural born requirement would provide a more inclusive process to determine the pool of presidential candidates and would do away with what most citizens consider an outdated and archaic requirement that made sense when it was written, but now seems as an unnecessary and discriminatory requirement in modern days. When our founding fathers wrote the Constitution, they included in the 14th Amendment to protect America from foreign countries coming and trying to take over. However, this can be taken as an insult to many naturalized Americans, for it sends a very discouraging message to children and other naturalized citizens that they can't pursue a certain dream or goal because of where they were born. One example that an article from the Washington Post gives is that if a child was born to a graduate student studying in the U.S., but raised mainly in that student's home country, then she would be eligible to run for president. On the other hand, that child was adopted from that country but has lived her whole life in the U.S., then she would not be eligible. I am that child. I have lived in the U.S. since I was an infant, but because I was born in China and adopted by American parents, I am not eligible to run for president of the only country I've called my home. Amending the Constitution to eliminate the natural born requirement would enable me and many others across America to achieve the dream of making a difference in the world by holding the highest honor in the land, the job of U.S. President. Thank you.
Patriotism isn't just something you receive, it is something that you earn. You earn it by doing something that is beyond you, something that shows that you are not only willing to help yourself, but your country. Welcome parents, teachers, students, and judges. A quote that really shows what patriotism is was said by John F. Kennedy. He states, "Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and success of liberty." This quote of his says that we will pay any price, help any friend, and oppose any enemy to make sure liberty stands in our nation. In this statement, he says that we will pay any price, and that's just what we'll do. One example is the lives of our soldiers. America has lost 651,008 soldiers in battle alone. That's not even including soldiers that have died from sickness and hunger. These battles range from some of the earliest wars like the Revolutionary War to some of the latest wars like the Vietnam War. But all of these wars have something in common. Brave soldiers risk their lives for us. The most patriotic part is, these troops don't risk their lives for their sake, they risk their lives for our sake. During World War I, multiple men signed up to fight without even being asked. Some days, over 10,000 men enlisted into military forces. This just proves to show that we are not willing to give up. We also pay tribute to our nation in money. We do this by paying tax on everything we earn or buy. These taxes can help pay for many things such as roads, military equipment, and education. This is how paying a little bit of taxes can show that you're willing to help out our nation. This quote also shows that we'll support any friend in need to help our nation and our surroundings. During World War II, we united with other countries to take down a common foe. This foe was the Nazis and everyone else under their rule. Throughout history, our allies have helped our nation. During the Revolutionary War, we united with our allies to take down Great Britain during a time of great need. Under Great Britain's rule, we had to follow their every order. But we rebelled against them and won freedom for all the nations. But patriotism doesn't always have to involve working with others in battle. It can include doing little things like picking up trash and helping our friends in our community. In fact, the definition of patriotism is the love for one's service through support, service, and defense. Our nation clearly shows us through our devoted loyalty and help. John F. Kennedy also said in his quote that we will oppose any foes and obstacles to assure liberty to our nation. During the Civil War, our nation split into two, but we fought our hardest to become whole again. The two groups that we split into were the Confederates and the Union. These two groups fought each other for what they thought was right, but in the end, the Union won and united our nation. In addition, the bloodiest battle was in the Civil War. It was pitted against Union General George McClellan's army and Confederate General Robert E. Lee's army. That battle was the bloodiest day in history, and 3,654 soldiers altogether died. But all of these battles happened for one reason. One author writes that the Civil War started because of differences in a national government to prohibit slavery. But even though we fought to protect what we thought was right. People can't just receive patriotism. They have to work for it. You are able to earn it by not only doing what you're supposed to do, but going beyond your limits. This quote reflects America in multiple ways. It shows that we will fight for our country and everything that's in it. John F. Kennedy didn't say this quote for no reason. He said it to make us aware that we can do great things for our country. Thank you.
Equal. Almost, but not quite. Equal. What does this word mean to you? Dictionary.com says evenly proportioned or balanced. But I say different, and Barbara Johns does too, because equality is much more than this. Good morning, fellow judges, parents, teachers, and contestants. My name is Taya Randolph, and today I am going to be talking to you about the Brown versus Board of Education lawsuit and the part Barbara Johns plays in it. As you may agree, discrimination of race was mishandled and unfortunate. Segregated schools were wicked and unrighteous, but Barbara Johns, the NAACP, and Oliver Browns helped African Americans reach justice. Born in 1935, civil rights activist Barbara Johns grew up into segregation. But by the time she was in high school, she would not allow herself to fathom the fact that exclusion of one's race was acceptable. At Robert Montan High School, an all-black high school, conditions were poor, such as overcrowding facilities made of tar paper, roofs leaked really bad, one pot-bellied stove that barely could even keep students warm. Some even called it a chicken shack. Made only to fit 150 students, but had more than 400 students. Two to three of the classes were held in the auditorium. Some were even held on the bus. To help improve this burden, they contacted the Board of Education to help build bigger schools, but board supervisors stalled and refused to give funds. So Barbara took matters into her own hands. Determined to take a stand, Ms. Johns led the first strike to protest against segregated schools with her peers at just the age of 16 years old. April 23, 1951, Johns marched into the auditorium and gave a bold, fearless, but convincing speech on why they deserve better. One thing led to another, and students were following after her lead. Later on, when they realized that nothing was being done, they took further action and called the NAACP, which then they hired lawyers to begin the process of a lawsuit because enough was enough. Brown versus Board of Education became one of only 5 cases to be reviewed by the United States Supreme Court. Equal, almost, but not quite. May 17, 1954, courts declared that segregation of school was unconstitutional. Out of spite, Harry Byrd closed all Virginia's public schools to block integration, Harry said. Virginia schools locked its doors and refused to merge. During this period of unfairness, most rich white students went to new private schools, and about 1,700 black or lower income white students tried to find schooling or just stayed home. Equal, almost, but not quite. As the role of a young African-American woman, segregated schools genuinely affect me by not allowing me or any other to have an education as exceptional as a white child should. But thankfully, Barbara Johns, the NAACP, and many more strong, powerful-minded activists helped me to be standing here today giving you this speech. They allowed me to wake up every morning knowing I will get an education faithfully without horrible environments. I have the ability and opportunity to learn and educate myself. All women and men shall be treated the same, no matter the religion or ethnicity. This is the true definition of equality. Barbara Johns, the NAACP, and Oliver Browns made a great impact on my future. So today, I want you to do something to make someone's day, because the smallest actions make the greatest impact. Thank you.
What does liberty mean to you? Good morning, judges, contestants, and audience members. What does liberty mean to you? Many would say liberty is synonymous with the word independence, which is true. But liberty to me means so much more than being free of control. To me, liberty means multiple things. Liberty means the freedom to say what you please without being punished by law. Liberty means the freedom to practice any religion you desire, which is illegal in many other countries. So many people in the United States take for granted the freedoms and privileges we're given here. Even more people protest for additional freedoms because they believe we should have more. I'm glad they can protest at all. The sounds of people yelling for equal rights when they already have them, that's what freedom sounds like. That's what liberty is. We are one of the freest countries in the world regarding human rights. According to the book Freedom of Speech and Information in Global Perspective, the reality is that less than 1 billion of the world's 7.2 billion inhabitants, or about 14%, live in countries where freedom of speech can even be mentioned. We as Americans are so lucky to live in a country where we have freedom of speech, religion, and so much more. People forget that we are the only country that has a First Amendment. We are the only country that has definite freedom of speech. For example, take New Zealand and Canada. According to the 2017 Human Freedom Index, New Zealand ranked number 3 in human freedom out of 195 countries, and Canada is number 11. Both countries are ranked above the United States, and both of these countries have freedom of expression, thought, religion, and belief, but no freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is not absolute in these otherwise free countries. The Canadian Charter says that the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the rights and freedoms set out in it, subject only to such reasonable limits prescribed by law as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. Yes, citizens can speak, they can protest, but government can censor people whenever they please if what the people are saying is not within reasonable limits prescribed by law. Freedom of speech is a part of liberty, and freedom of speech is rare. Liberty, to me, means the ability to freely say and do what you please, so long as it's within the law. But what does liberty mean to others? A lot of people, especially women, believe that women are at a disadvantage, and that we don't have equal rights in the United States. I don't think this is true. There is not one right in the Constitution men have that women do not. The Equal Rights Amendment makes this illegal. The Equal Rights Amendment says that equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. The people who believe we don't have equal rights work to vigorously protest for a country that has them. We've had equal rights since the 1970s. Americans need to understand that we do have these freedoms in our country. This is what liberty is. We live lives full of privilege when the rest of the world still has a ways to go, whether it be a small step or a large change. As stated before, countless countries around the world, it is illegal to practice certain religions. The Index on Censorship website says that China's constitution provides for freedom of religious belief, but the government actively restricts any religious expression that could potentially undermine its authority. Only 5 religious groups, Buddhists, Taoists, Muslims, Catholics, and Protestants, can register within the government and legally hold services. Adherents of unregistered faiths often worship illegally and in secret. So it sounds like the freedom of religious belief is pointless when you don't have the freedom to practice beyond these set of options. If we take a step back and look at all that the world is lacking, we begin to realize how good we have it here, how privileged we are. We are given so many rights that people in other countries just don't have. There are so many more rights that I didn't talk about, like the right to bear arms, freedom of the press, and etc. Liberty to me means all of these things. Liberty is the freedom to say what you please without being punished. Liberty is the freedom to practice any religion you desire, or not practice a religion. Freedom is so many things. Liberty is so many things to me. We are truly in a state of freedom in the United States regarding human rights. This is what liberty should mean to everyone. Thank you.
Picture this. It's a regular morning where you work at the World Trade Center. Below you, you can hear the noisy people bustling around, while above you, you hear the roar of a commercial airplane as it slices through the cloud-filled sky. You don't know it yet, but your life is about to take a drastic turn for the worst. The date is September 11th, 2001. 2,977 people will be killed, and 412 of them are first responders. An additional 6,000 people will be injured as our Twin Towers are reduced to rubble. This is the doing of terrorists. A plague of darkness blankets our nation. Every heart breaks. There is not a dry eye in all of our nation. But just when it seems all hope is lost, that there is no spirit or patriotism left in America, 3 brave firefighters raise a dirty, battered American flag on a broken flagpole. Judges, parents,
fellow contestants, and guests. My name is Lily Van Roekel. On that horrid day in history, despair was everywhere. But 3 firefighters from the local New York Fire Department wanted to show their fellow Americans that all was not lost. So they raised our flag. Now this may seem like such a small and inconsequential thing to do, but to the citizens of our country, this act meant the world. Our nation's colors, red, white, and blue, flying boldly and proudly in the breeze like a beacon of hope. This act showed bravery, it showed respect, it showed honor, and it showed patriotism. Our former President, Barack Obama, said that even the smallest act of kindness, the simplest act of service, is a way to honor those we lost and a way to reclaim the spirit that followed 9/11. Patriotism. Now, what does this word mean to you? For some people, it may just mean that they love their countries, but for others, it may mean devotion. Everyone has a different perspective of what patriotism means. I know that for me, it's a combination of many things. I do love my country, and I am proud of what it stands for. When people talk about the United States of America, I think about our ability to vote and have our voices heard through a representative form of government. But I also think about how we were able to overcome a tragedy such as 9/11. And not only were we able to overcome that, but we were able to overcome it together. We truly became united as one country under one flag. Unity, the state of being united or joined as whole. After the attacks of September 11th, our country had never been more broken. Yet at the same time, our country had never been more whole. People from around our nation supported each other. They sent their love to people they had never even met before. And we truly became united in our patriotism and in our hope for a better future. The attacks of September 11th were intended to break our spirit, but instead we have emerged stronger and more unified. We feel renewed devotion to the principles of political, economic, and religious freedoms, the rule of law, and the respect for human life. A quote by Rudy Giuliani, the mayor of New York City during the attacks. On September 11th, 2001, we were attacked by terrorists. Thousands of people died and even more were injured. It was a catastrophe, an assault on our nation as a whole. In the midst of the chaos and the darkness, 3 patriotic firefighters raised our flag. They didn't do it for themselves. They did it to bring hope back to our nation, to bring spirit and to bring patriotism. George W. Bush said that we will remember every person that died in honor. We will remember every person who now lives in grief. We will always remember.
Former book author Rochelle Goodrich once said, "Some say freedom is a responsibility, a weight to be carried and shared by those willing to protect it." She's trying to tell us that even though our Constitution and military may have given us those freedoms, it's our responsibility to protect the freedoms we have. In fact, those willing to protect shall be every one of us, just like others before us, our military, and even me. In 1914, the United States Armed Forces fought for what they believed America needed in World War I to keep our world free from tyranny. Without regard to personal harm, they carried out these responsibilities and kept fighting until they won. Not only did they win, but they protected our country and put in the work to make sure we were all safe. My great-grandpa fought in World War II. He had the courage and dedication to fight for our country. He also took away time from his family to protect each and every one of us. Along with fighting for Americans, our military had many duties to take care of. Their bravery, faith, and courage were among some of the attributes to protect the rest of the world as well. These amazing men and women had the internal dedication and bravery to protect us and the ones around us. But most importantly, they defended our country and freedom. Theodore Roosevelt, Martin Luther King Jr., what did they have in common? Theodore Roosevelt was a huge help to our country. He was sworn into the office of presidency in 1901. During his time in office, he was most known for his ecological conservationism.
along with his unforgettable actions. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, which says a lot about him. Now, Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. knew exactly what he had to do. He fought for equality and human rights for African Americans. MLK was also awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964 due to his influence on the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. He showed a tremendous amount of bravery, responsibility, and courage to his fellow Americans, which has helped shape our society today. Without him, our country would be exactly how it used to be long ago, cruel and unfair. As a kid, my grandpa and uncle were great to look up to, because seeing them both fight showed exactly what patriotism was. What is patriotism, you ask? Webster's dictionary defines it as showing love to one's country through service and defense. My grandpa and uncle exemplified this by serving and defending our country at the young age of 18. I too exemplify responsibility and patriotism, clubs, sports, and activities. Running, for example. I may have practice every other day, but it's my responsibility to come to practice and even practice on my own. But not only sports. Being in a club, such as National Junior Honor Society, is what I love doing. But to do it, you need to be ready for jobs and to be trusted to do them. I hope you all can now see why being responsible with the freedoms from those willing to protect is what America needed long ago, right now, and in the many years ahead of us. I can't help but to look back at the quote Rochelle Goodrich once said. Some say freedom is a responsibility, a weight to be carried and shared by those willing to protect it. She showed us that with the responsibilities we have, we need to be respectful with how we use our freedoms and rights. I'm ready to take on the responsibility of being a patriot. Are you?
Do you believe that something only a bit bigger than your hands could change our world? Welcome judges, families, and fellow contestants. My name is Mia Sakaros, and I think that Harriet Beecher Stowe should definitely be considered the most patriotic person. Harriet Beecher Stowe was entirely devoted to our nation, wrote a life-changing novel, was part of the movement to end slavery, and is still inspiring Americans today. During the mid-1800s, being an abolitionist and going against the Fugitive Slave Act was not the popular thing to do. However, Harriet Beecher Stowe was one of the few outstanding abolitionists that stood up for what's right, even when at times they were standing alone. The inspiring abolitionists wanted to change the mindset of all Americans to make them see the realistic aspects of what was happening around them. Although she was aware what would happen to her if she was caught doing what was forbidden, she still wanted to do what is right. Even though we are not faced with the same challenges of that era, how many of us today would be willing to risk everything we have to do the right thing? Stowe grew up in a Christian home where her father and 7 brothers were ministers. She decided to write this novel and hoped to help out newly freed, vulnerable African Americans. Harriet Beecher Stowe was so devoted to her country, she risked everything she had for our great nation. Could something as simple as a novel change the way we live forever? You may not have thought about it, but what about the Bible, the jungle, the grapes of wrath, To Kill a Mockingbird? Each of these books have impacted future generations and paved the way for equality. Conversations with a Slave Mother gave Stowe the inspiration for what would end up being, in my opinion, one of the most influential books about slavery ever written. Her novel was life-changing and educated people on the true horrors of slavery. Now, an excerpt from Uncle Tom's Cabin. Henrique struck him across the face, and seizing one of his arms, forced him onto his knees and beat him till he was out of breath. Just hearing this makes my heart hurt, to know that human beings were once brutally beaten for the tiniest mistake, for the tiniest refusal, for the tiniest word mumbled. Could you imagine this being done to you, your family, your children, or your friends?
This was a heart-aching story and put some slave masters in the mindset of their slaves. This truthful novel narrowed the gap between slaves and their owners. Harriet Beecher Stowe was an inspiration and very courageous for writing this novel. Unlike the recent movement to end slavery acts, Harriet Beecher Stowe took a nonviolent approach to this issue of slavery and did more than the majority of violent approaches did. Not only did this nonviolent approach do more, but it was completely successful. The social studies article titled Harriet Beecher Stowe stated it had such an impact in arousing feeling against slavery that it had been credited with helping to cause the Civil War. After the novel was published, many critics tried to get it discredited by stating Stowe was lying. Harriet was not going to be walked on, but she remained nonviolent. She decided to write another piece called A Key to Uncle Tom's Cabin to break it down further. No one believed that one novel could lead to changing the face of our nation. Does someone inspire you? Do you look up to someone? Do you wish to be more like a specific person? I know some people inspire me, and Harriet Beecher Stowe is definitely one of them. Did you know that Uncle Tom's Cabin was the second best-selling novel of the 19th century, only to be beaten by the Bible? Harriet Beecher Stowe was such an amazing writer that a previous news editor had paid her $100 to keep writing for that news column. Although she was a stunning writer, she was an even stronger woman. Harriet Beecher Stowe was forced to grow up without a mother's guidance because her mother died when she was only 5 years old. With so many obstacles in her way, she still managed to get through everything and make a great difference in this world. Even though Harriet Beecher Stowe died nearly 125 years ago, she still inspires Americans today. We all need to recognize the sacrifices and the example that she has set before us. She was truly a patriotic hero, and I am forever grateful. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity. And I know I would like to be as bold, fearless, and persistent as Harriet Beecher Stowe. Wouldn't you?
We will always remember. We will always be proud. We will always be prepared, so we will always be free. Hello, my name is Colleen Corcoran. Welcome, judges, fellow contestants, teachers, and special guests. Ronald Reagan constantly motivated people and tried to help better our nation through the power of words. He used his quotes to help guide future generations to make sure America always remained full of opportunities. In this quote, he demonstrates that to maintain our freedom, we must always remember, be proud, and be prepared. First of all, we must remember. We must remember the life-changing events that helped to shape our future, such as 9/11. September 11th, 2001 was a catastrophic day that damaged the United States and many people's lives. Although this event killed over 3,000 people, destroyed the Twin Towers, and damaged the Pentagon, it helped to show America's true unity. That day, we were not divided by political parties or races. We were all Americans who were all suffering the same loss. Congress gathered outside that night, singing God Bless America. The next morning, there was no road rage, just smiling and American flags flying from car antennas. So, we remember this event. So no matter what challenge we may face, we always remain one nation under God. Also, we must remember the soldiers, firefighters, and police officers who died fighting and protecting this beautiful nation. But how do we remember them? A few examples are visiting a cemetery, monument, or memorial, having a moment of silence, supporting their families, and keeping their legacies alive. Even though these tragedies and losses are difficult to look back on and remember, we must, so they never happen again. Second of all, we must be proud. We should have pride for our country and everything it stands for. On the morning of February 23, 1945, the 28th Marines were fighting the Japanese in the Battle of Iwo Jima. Even though the Marines knew the Japanese had a secret network of tunnels up Mount Suribachi, they went up to show their pride. The Marines fought their way all the way up the volcano, going to the summit. When 6 men from the troop made it to the summit, they took the flag Lieutenant Harold Schreier had given them and raised it. Even though this raising of the flag may not seem like that big of a deal, it was a symbol of every soldier and citizen's pride. Americans constantly show their pride by hanging a flag out in their yard or saying the pledge in the morning with passion. Citizens are proud of the freedoms that our country has earned, such as the freedom of speech, press, religion, and assembly. We have a very diverse nation, and everyone that has become a citizen of this great country is proud of the opportunities and freedoms they have. Also, we are proud of our unity and how united our country is. When we face tragedies, we do not fall apart. We come together, stronger than before, showing all that our country stands for. Third of all, we must be prepared. Our military is prepared for any challenge they may face. To be prepared, the men and women of the armed forces train daily and continue to train until everything they have been taught becomes second nature. For example, have you ever heard the jets flying over your house throughout the day? That's the Air Force training at Luke Air Force Base, so they are prepared. Our military is ready at any moment's notice for anything to go awry. Planners make possible scenarios and plans for what they will do if those events occur. Our military tracks tension around the globe so they can station our troops where they are needed the most, making sure America remains safe. It is our military's top priority to keep America safe, so they will do whatever is needed to complete that mission. In conclusion, Ronald Reagan teaches us in this quote that to maintain our freedom, we must always remember, be proud, and be prepared. We must remember the tragedies and losses our country suffered. We must be proud of our country, our freedom, and our unity. And we must be prepared for any challenge we may face. I know together as a nation, we can sustain our freedom for generations to come. So, will you accept the challenge?
Welcome, judges, guests, and fellow contestants. My name is Kenzie Prazak, and today I'm going to take you back in time. The day is November 10th, 1864. Abraham Lincoln, our 16th President of the United States, confidently speaks these words: "Gold is good in its place, but living, brave, patriotic men are better than gold." He said this to a corrupt nation that was quickly crumbling down, a divided country desperate for unity. Abraham Lincoln knew that if we weren't careful, greed could tear us apart. But he also knew that the patriotic citizens of America would be the glue that binds us together. In Abe Lincoln's quote, he says that he valued living, brave, patriotic men. The first thing I think of when I hear those words is our United States military. They have made the ultimate sacrifice of putting their lives on the line because of their undying love for our country. Lincoln didn't care what color their skin was or what religion they were. All he cared about was if they were willing to stand by our country and help unite the citizens of America. Every year, moms, dads, brothers, sisters, cousins, and grandparents say goodbye to their families and their homes for months and even years at a time, just so that they can help support our nation. In this past year, I got to experience this in my own life. My cousin, Titus Jones, at only the age of 17, left for 3 months this summer to begin his journey in our U.S. military. He went to basic training so that he's prepared to join the Army as soon as he can. He's only a teenager, but he already knows that he wants to serve our country. That is a perfect example of the ultimate sacrifice, a perfect example of patriotism. And even though serving in the military is the ultimate way to support our country, it's not the only way to support our country. Every day you can be patriotic without even thinking about it. Things like standing to recite the pledge, taking off your hat for a moment of silence, or even performing small acts of kindness are great ways to show your respect to our country. And when you execute patriotism, it will cause others around you to want to do the same. Artist Zero Dean said, "A single act of kindness may seem like such a small thing, but so is the ember that started the wildfire." About 2 years ago, I was dancing at a recital. Everything was going fine till about halfway through the song and the music stopped. I froze in the middle of the stage. My eyes went wide. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. The audience went dead silent. Till one man, a stranger even, got to his feet and started clapping and cheering for me at the top of his lungs, and in a split second, the entire audience was doing the same. That one man that stood up for me, he was the ember that started the wildfire. In Lincoln's quote, we can also see that he'd rather have a patriotic nation than a greedy nation, because if we let money control us, patriotism is demolished. People will do anything and everything for money. If everyone in our country was craving money, you wouldn't be able to trust anyone. Everybody would lie, steal, and stab each other in the back. But the problem is, it's human nature to be selfish. Our society today always yearns for bigger and better things. We always want more. All we do is consume and take, and we don't give back at all. But greed always ends in corruption. It drives people insane. It tears people apart. It tears nations apart. If we let greed control us, we are dogs at the mercy of our master. Puppets with strings tied around our arms. No control over our own minds. And that's why we need to put selflessness and patriotism first to keep our nation together. Now you can see that undoubtedly America has thrived off of unity and patriotism. Gold is good in its place, but living, brave, patriotic men are better than gold. When it comes down to it, don't we all have true gold inside of us? The kind that comes from loving and supporting each other as a nation with unwavering confidence? To me, that's better than the gold you wear around your neck.
This nation was founded by men of many nations and backgrounds. It was founded on the principle that all men are created equal, and that the rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened. It ought to be possible, in short, for every American to enjoy the privileges of being an American without regard to race or color. John F. Kennedy. Judges, fellow contestants, guests, my name is Chiamaka Wazwe, and I am an immigrant. People like you and I helped form this great country, and we will also help push it towards a flourishing future. America lawfully admits about 1 million immigrants to the United States every year. They come from many different countries and for many different reasons. My own parents immigrated from Nigeria to find better opportunities. Others come to escape danger. Each and every one of these people who are admitted into the United States have the possibility to become something great and to succeed in life. They have the possibility to help advance this country. But it's not easy. A lot of them come with little to no money and no family, just the clothes on their backs. But the ones who have a passion for success persevere through all their initial hardships. For instance, my father had to go back to university when we came to this country because his degrees are considered foreign certificates. This is very hard on my family because it took time and money, of which we did not have a lot of. But like many others, my dad went back to school to further his education and advance his skills. This helped him later to apply for and obtain a great job. People like my father and many others who have struggled through similar things help enrich America today. A lot of the leaders, veterans, athletes, doctors, businessmen, women, and creators who have added immensely to America are immigrants. For example, Serge G. Brin, Albert Einstein, Levi Strauss, Bennett Omalu, Christian Okoye, Madeleine Albright, and many others. These people who have added to the social, economic, and political fabric of this nation. They have been law-abiding, patriotic Americans. I think it's beautiful that we live in a country where very different people can come together and make something as amazing as this wonderful country. There seems to be a recent intensification of anti-immigrant sentiments
fueled by racism and discrimination by some people who hold the high offices in this country. However, we should not let a few closed-minded people affect what America truly is, and that is a nation that welcomes immigrants and thrives on diversity and inclusion. So I say to immigrants seeking a place in this great land, are you ready? Are you ready to work hard and persevere through all your hardships? That means not being put down just because you're different. Because you know when we say we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. You mean it, and it's true. Thank you.
For centuries, our country has been built on three concepts: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. One of these gives us the power to freely speak our minds, practice different religions, and so much more. Liberty holds a massive amount of meaning and value, but with that comes many different perceptions of its true definition. Welcome judges, teachers, parents, and fellow contestants. My name is Sarah Beth Smith, and since every viewpoint is never the same, even by the slightest bit, I will expose to you the meaning of liberty through my own perspective. By basic definition, liberty is the state of being free within society from oppressive restrictions imposed by the authority on one's way of life, behavior, or political views. We can all agree that liberty is the result of the protection of our basic rights we're given under the Constitution. To me, however, liberty is more than just that. Liberty is the reason why many, if not all of us, wake up in the morning with the intentions of going on with the day. Liberty is the reason why we are not powerless beings living under tyrants. Liberty is the reason why we all have the opportunity to live successful, happy lives. A life without liberty is a life I don't think would be worth living. Now, I would like everyone to close their eyes and imagine themselves standing outside in an alternate world that is just like the reality you know so well. But the realization hits you that this world is even worse than what you expected. As you roam the streets, you become witness to severe racism, sexism, harassment, and utter discrimination. To your right, you stand in horror as you watch a group of innocent petitioners being beaten and rounded up by the police. You run up to the nearest officer and ask what was going on, to only be responded with, "They don't believe how our society does. Therefore, it's our job to eradicate rebels like them." Your whole body tenses in fury and you decide to speak up. But there's something stopping you. It's as if an invisible ball and chain is holding onto your vocal cords for dear life. Is this fear? No, it can't be. You open your mouth to put this nightmare to an end, but nothing is heard. In the depths of the shadows, a voice speaks. You are my slave in a world of silence. Open your eyes. That was a world without liberty. I know you may think that the scenario I just described is a bit unrealistic or far-fetched, but when you think about it, many countries are run in such a corrupted way like this. Based on a report from the World Atlas, many nations like North Korea, Iran, Cuba, Sudan, Afghanistan, and Venezuela give their citizens little to no freedom. The people are starving to death from chronic food shortages and suffering from outbreaks of diseases due to dismal public health. These same people have most likely been put into prison camps or experienced things like human trafficking and torture in attempted fleeing the country. The worst part, though, is that they aren't able to express their troubles for the society they live in without serious consequences. Considering the unfortunate states that these nations are in should make us appreciate our system of government even more. Although we use so many of our rights every single day without even taking notice of them, do we actually stop to realize how valuable they really are? We didn't just have liberty handed down to us without a cost. As of February 2017, about 2.1 million people are currently sacrificing their lives to fight for the freedoms that most of us take for granted. How do you think they would feel knowing what some of our fellow Americans do to use and abuse our rights? Even Ronald Reagan once said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same." What you should take away from this is that as citizens of the United States of America, the least we can do for our country is to defend the privilege of the liberties we possess. Because without liberty, I wouldn't be standing up here today, voicing my opinion, nor would you all have the ability to agree or disagree with me. Without liberty, we'd all be the same blank slate of nothing. Thank you.